The SPY has officially gone to new all-time highs, and we see that we're also getting really, really close to our monthly expected move, even landing outside of a weekly expected move this week. And the market has continued to just refuse to turn down and cross up into positive territory every single time that we do have the chance to head in that downward direction. So you have to be paying attention to how this market can remain irrational for longer than you can try to short the damn thing, and that's why the easier trade is most likely the daily pullback. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today, as we talk about where that daily pullback can come and what could go on in other parts of the market to overall show us the signs that this could overall be happening. So we're going to go through a bunch of different things today. We're going to talk about the dollar, we're going to talk about the 10-year yield, and we're going to talk about the SPY and show you some of the riskier stocks out there. We'll show you guys those monthly expected moves because those are changing this week. So if you want to get those updated monthly expected moves, which a bunch of stocks we actually got to again this month, so very, very nice. If you want to get that, the Patreon link is down in the description. But right now, I think we just need to get into it. So I'm still leaving my little circle down here just in case, but the SPY is very likely to see some kind of euphoria and continue the move for a little bit, possibly even into July 9th. Now, what things could cause some kind of daily pullback that we're going to talk about today? Well, we need to talk about the fact that the market has headed in that upward direction while the dollar has been kind of sitting around going, hey, I'm going down, down, down. I'm starting to potentially look like I want to reverse around as I go into the bottom of my big channel. So we will be watching the dollar from this standpoint and seeing if we get some kind of reaction at these levels. We will notice that the weekly chart is very, very low at this point for the MACD. So we would be looking for those lower highs. But this doesn't mean that the dollar can't head in that upward direction. You see that from January to now, we have headed down, 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 and the market has had like pretty much seen some kind of turbulence, then headed up, up, up. So now we do have the dollar coming down while the SPY is going in that upward direction. And we do have some 10-year yield stuff to look at as well. So let's go over into that for a second. So overall, what we were stating in the first part was you can see that the SPY right here around April started to head in that upward direction pretty aggressively. And right around that time, actually, the SPY was able to, or sorry, the dollar was able to break down and continue in that downward direction as well. So you do have a bit of a negative correlation here, which just suggests, hey, maybe I do want to pay attention if the dollar starts to go in the other direction and the SPY starts to react to the downside. We have bought ourselves some time, potentially into July 9th, potentially into July expiration, but I'm going to pay heavy attention to next week and pretty much, I think, from now until July expiration, or I would say July 9th, you really have to be on guard for some kind of drop. But something that could cause a drop and why we might see a drop is what if the 10-year yield starts to bounce in that upward direction? We still see that this is within range of going positive. And a lot of the time when you see upside for the dollar, the 10-year yield can follow, or the 10-year yield goes up and the dollar will follow. We will see this instance right in here and right in here when they went up at the same time. But they haven't been the most correlated lately. What happens if these things turn around? Well, you can see that if they were able to turn around, the dollar would still be in some kind of negative trend, but the 10-year yield would be overall positive. And now you might be saying, okay, well, if this is going to go up and we're going to see the 10-year go up, and people might start to get that inflation in their mind again, what could be the overall problems going on here? And this is where I really wanted to just zoom out and take you down to this area down here where I had a few things written up that I saw as potential for those things. Well, if we're going to see the 10-year yield go up, are we going to see like extreme strength in the labor market? Are we going to see extreme strength in the consumer? Are we going to see extreme strength across the board still? Or are we hearing more about layoffs? I'm not necessarily thinking that this one would be the solution for the 10-year to go in that upward direction. Now, Iran, Israel, any kind of war going on over there, any kind of escalation going on there can cause the 10-year yield to have to rise in certain scenarios. So it's something to pay attention to, but something that I think I like and seems to be the most obvious. It's not this one, it's not this one, but this one over on July 9th. On July 9th, we do see the pause lifted, the 90-day pause for the tariffs to be lifted, and we can see a reaction from markets because of that. And I think that would be very, very interesting to be a narrative for us to overall top at that point, and we start to hear more and more about inflation. While that happens, though, we can see the bond market start to price in and say, yes, we need these rates to go higher. But all the Fed has to do is, if these go higher by September or before September, announce some kind of cut, and then we're able to roll that move. Because if you do not end up seeing some kind of cut and the bond market actually come back here pretty aggressively, well, I don't think you want to see where this thing is overall going, because it's going to go to the upside for a long period of time. And we could see 10% rates, which is very, very bad for homes, right? You trying to buy a house. But think if you had trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in debt and you had to pay interest on that debt, and you don't want to pay higher interest than what you're paying right now. So I think that we are in a recipe for a debt crisis if we do not cut at some point in September. Then I believe that we are going to see the U.S. not be able to, or struggle to pay for the interest, because the interest will be growing more than those payments even really suffice. So that those are some topics that I would heavily be aware of over the next few weeks. But you know me, I don't necessarily need to pay attention to a bunch of news. I just like to stay aware and say, hey, if the 10-year yield's going to keep going in a positive trend, what would cause it? And then pay attention to a big point like July 9th. So I'm pointing it out to you guys. But does that mean that I'm going to short everything right now because July 9th is going to be bad? No. And that's why we actually have to get into some technical analysis to figure out this daily pullback. And we are going to go into just a few shorter time frames as we talk about the week ahead. So let's get back into the SPY. And we might go into the shorter time frames. I kind of want to save that to see those weekly expected moves that I haven't calculated yet, but we do see that the yellow line has been gotten to. Once you get like this close to it, this is why I didn't play the last push. I was like, this is close enough for me. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. These are great trades. Didn't have to happen to play this one, even though we did have the divergence that we notified you about last weekend, last Friday. And very, very nice trade setups for things like Palantir were put out there. So we've been looking at some good stuff. We've been trying to pay attention and trying to trade like water. It has been sometimes difficult to navigate. So what is easy to navigate is the fact that I've been patient all of this week. I've really just been like, hey, I don't really want to play this. I'm going to be patient and see if we're able to get a daily pullback, see if we're able to get a daily pullback at some point for the SPY. Now, the thing about this daily pullback and why you don't necessarily want to stay or get down here, if you are going to get down there, you don't want to be there long, is because of the weekly chart. If the weekly chart actually crosses and goes negative, that can be a really, really bad sign for markets. So if you're going to pull back here, you want it to be relatively brief. That is why I don't necessarily want it to go into August, or we could not pull back aggressively to this area at all. So I'm going to give you two levels to still pay attention to. This level right here is the most probable place to pull back to at this point, because you are very likely to continue the move and then be able to curl down to find those buyers to head in that upward direction. That would take you right into July expiration if that were to take place. So that's something we can watch for. But another thing we can watch for is just, does the daily curl down into negative territory, and does it curl up and be able to go back to positive? Because that is very likely to be our low. And we will look for 2-hour divergences or things like that into while this is actually forming, because we pay attention to those things, right? We use our weekly and monthly expected moves, and these monthly expected moves for July or for June are about to change to July, but we can really pay attention where that monthly expected move lands. Now, something that's very important is it's going to really depend on how we land over the next couple of trading sessions. So just be aware that this will, like where that pricing is at, where the actual monthly close is at, can dictate, where we're actually going to see that kind of range. All right, so we'll be paying attention to things like that. But for now, you're just going, okay, this can continue into July 9th. It might pull back and then continue again, and then we start to experience something ugly. So that's what we're watching for. But all of this is talk about scenarios that ultimately say, hey, there's going to be a daily pullback. Now, if that daily pullback does not want to come down into these areas, but instead we do the ultra bullish thing pretty much for July, then you would actually scale up more here. You would pull back, you'd scale up more here, and then you would actually pull back down into these levels and be able to raise that floor up a little bit. So these are the type of things that can take place if we're going to see an absolute boom. But if we're going to see a bust, which I think we're bound to see some kind of bust in the next few weeks, then we will see a pullback down to at least something like 585 for the SPY. The Qs, we have all the same stuff. If you wanted a little different take on the Qs, you're looking for this, right? Left, head, right shoulder. What do we say? Hey, it breaks the high. You're looking for the right shoulder that could have been. And guess what? That brings you to the price point right here. So if you were looking for an area to pay attention to for the Qs using some price action, using some blocks, hey, you're looking right here in the middle towards that 516 to 515 area. But if you wanted to, you could join Patreon and then get the monthly expected move next month. And if you see a daily pullback, we're very likely to go to a downside monthly expected move. Isn't that fun? But for now, you would be looking for a maybe continuation for a slight minute here to get to July 9th. Then we're able to pull back to something like 515, and then we're able to curl up into positive territory. That would be very, very nice for the Qs. That would be very, very interesting, wouldn't it? Now, if we're going to break down, then we are most likely going to lose this zone. So let's talk about how we go lower. You would most likely not want to see some kind of extended move like this. This is possible to keep squeezing right now and then pull back and raise that floor to pull back into higher places, right? So we'll watch for that. But as we do go up into here, as we have seen a massive run, a nice, scary retrace to curl up into positive territory on this MACD down here would be a very good thing. Now, the MACD does go negative at times, but you'll notice after these massive runs, and look at this massive run right here. It's like very, very cool to see another run like this big, even bigger, taking place here. So this one pulled back that aggressively. So we have the opportunity to pull back potentially that aggressively if something's bad enough. I don't think it'll be as bad as we think, but just in case we see something that aggressive, we need to be paying attention to how it would want to break down. Well, how it would want to break down is overall losing some kind of zone in here, right? Reacting back up, then rejecting from this zone in some way to get down towards these lower levels. But this would be the probably worst case scenario for the look we have right now. You can break down lower. There's always a percentage to break down lower. All you're going to have to do is lose everything in here, lose everything to this point right here, and you would have to see that stair stepper down for a long period of time. Now, that can take a long time, right? So if this were to play out, wouldn't a weekly chart be crossing? And a weekly chart crossing is not necessarily a great sign right now because it's close to that center line. So I don't think you want to see this. And if you do see this, you might want to watch out for another lower high at that point from the daily chart. So we're going to be watching this very, very carefully over the next few weeks. We still see this being able to extend into July 9th. I think you have built up and bought some more time there. So we'll be watching. And tomorrow, if you want to hear the take for the week, you can join us so you are subscribed. And we have a few other stocks to get into, so stick with us. Because we are at the end of the month, I'm going to use my other charts. And first of all, the SPY, because I just had the moving averages up, I want you to look at that 250 about to cross, and where we would want to test to go higher is directly into that 585. So you have even more inclination. Now, a lot of people say they might use this for their actual trading strategy. I use it as a guideline, right? I use it as a place to pay attention. And now you're seeing that the place we were talking about paying attention is now adding up to a place where the 200 is saying you should pay attention, where the 50 is saying you should pay attention. So if we see some kind of buildup, some kind of drop down into this area, who's to say this 200 is not coming across and we're just dinking right off of it? That would be fantastic. We have opportunities to lose it for a moment and go down deeper. That does happen, but it will be a good area to pay attention. We will notice some things going across the board here, though. We will see Apple is not at a monthly expected move, so very interesting stuff there. We will see that Tesla did get to a monthly expected move, made the reversal signal we wanted, and went right back to the center, but is kind of ping-ponging between two zones. We see that Amazon is seeing a breakout, closing at the high of the day, looking like it wants to mega squeeze up into 236, and that would just be pretty wild. But as of right now, starting a position, right, the reason I'm going to do this point in the video is to show you how starting a position in certain stocks can look better on other ones than it would for ones that are already outside of monthly moves, right? if you wanted to catch something like this and it's going to go up like here, well, now your percentages are directly against you for the next few days. So it doesn't give you a bunch of confidence. Even though you consolidated and you broke out, starting a position with this look is not a habit that I necessarily would condone for myself in trading. I myself would not take a call here just because you have a 68% chance that this reverses back down in the next few trading sessions. Even though the structure looks great, it's not a stat that I play around with, right? This is your 32% zone. This is your 68% zone, and you just broke out above it. So starting a position, not necessarily the best. If you have a position down in here, I get it. But starting one now would be very difficult, is all I'm saying about that. And the same would be said about NVIDIA. And I think NVIDIA has really risen the floor here. And I don't think it really has to go down to that 115 anymore. I think that it potentially could just go down to that 133. I really like the level of 133 for NVIDIA for July, and we'll see how that shapes up. But as of right now, starting a position with this up there way above the monthly expected move, you start the position when the MACD is way up here. You start the position when the RSI is way up here. For me, I like to take 2 to 8 week plays. So if you're telling me I'm going to hold on to this for even just 2 weeks and it's going to be a good trade to the upside, I think at this point, my common sense would kick in and just say, I don't really believe you. And I would say the same thing for AMD. AMD is still very likely to come down to this 115, and it is seeing a crazy 5% pretty much. Actually, not pretty much. You are in the 5% area right now. So right here, you're like, hey, 5% chance we close here in the next few sessions. There is a 95% chance 95% chance that we close in here. So I don't play with that stat. I know it can happen. 5% of the time it'll happen. Am I going to play around with that and say, oh, this is going to continue, right? At this point, when the MACD is way up there, when the RSI is way up there, or am I going to say, hey, maybe being patient is a little bit easier? And I think being patient is a little bit easier from this standpoint. So for AMD, you are looking for the potential pullback for another move higher, and you don't have to go all the way down here. We'll look for reversal signals here. We'll look for those reversal signals at lower levels. All right, so we'll be watching that for AMD, but you're starting to see how a lot of these stocks are still seeing crazy things, but going up, up, up and away, creating potential divergences here for Meta outside of a monthly expected move, where this is a daily divergence says we could do this, right? We could go down lower towards like 635 for something like Meta, and we're going to take all the way into potentially earnings for these things to take place. So Meta is really saying, I'm pretty tapped out. Yes, I can squeeze further to raise that floor, but eventually I will see a big drop that leads to the next pop, and maybe being patient for the big drop into the next pop is the person to be, and that would be the same for Microsoft. Do you see how there's kind of a trend here where I'm not picking and choosing? I'm literally going through the right side of your screen right now through these stocks over here and just showing you, and most of them are outside of their monthly move, which means they can land outside of there, but it is still very likely to get a daily pullback, at least early on in July. We're tapped out. So I think this would be very interesting, and something like Microsoft has seen a great grinding squeeze to the upside. You have gotten squeeze behavior on a daily chart for Microsoft, so congratulations if you were able to catch everything with Microsoft, if you were able to catch the fact that we had the higher low scenario from back in the day, and this bad boy ran. That's fan-freaking-tastic. So something that we'll look for here for Microsoft is some kind of pullback. We will discuss this one further tomorrow, and we will potentially be doing a live stream, a private stream for our community over on Patreon if you would like to join us tomorrow night. Patreon members, look over there because I'm going to have a little vote if you guys would like to do that tomorrow night so we can kind of have a prep for the week ahead. But Microsoft very likely to pull back, but notice that it has extended so much. So would you say that Microsoft is very likely to do this all of a sudden? I would say that that's a little less probable. I would say it's more likely that it could see something like this over time and get down to something like 455 and then be able to figure its stuff out and turn up into positive territory. So there's a good area for you to pay attention to towards I believe it was right into here towards like 455 area. Google is one that could extend the move for a moment here, extend the move for a couple of days, then daily pullback. That can happen because we haven't gotten to monthly move. We'll have to go into shorter time frames for this, but Google right now would say, hey, yeah, I just curled up. I need to make a new high, then pull back, then go up to these type of levels. Maybe you could look for a weekly expected upside move for Google, weirdly enough. Now, we could get into these smaller stocks, but some of them look riskier than others. AMC, GME, DJT, none of those really showing too much. AMC saw a buy at the end of the day. We'll see what happens. But for these ones like SoFi, you're starting to reach up into these areas. I know that there's potential short seller problems and things going on, and we did experience some kind of drop in the market, but for now, you're just going starting a call position is risky. We're outside of the monthly expected move. All right. Palantir. Now, this is an actual trade setup that we posted to Patreon, and the daily scale has confirmed this. So you can see other reactions, you can see little bounces and things like that, but Palantir is showing you the move right now that I think we could see in the overall market, which is down into up, into down, and then we actually figure our stuff out for Palantir. So this is a great trade. This is our golden setup. This is why we pointed it out. It's not even at the monthly move, but when you see it, you see it, and we had a weekly move for it. So congratulations if you were able to tackle this trade. We posted this to Patreon just to say this would be a very, very good stock to try to execute a trade on, because there is divergence on the daily, there's divergence on the 2 hour, there's divergence on the 30-minute. That is our golden setup from the course down in the description, and that is a fantastic play. And you'll see that the 30-minute confirmed, and it's never unconfirmed, and it has been fan-freaking-tastic ever since. We didn't even get the full reaction back up into here. We did get a small retest into the bottom side. If you were paying attention to fair value here, you would be marking this off like so, and you would say a tap into the zone that rolls is a bad thing. And guess what? It was a bad thing. Congratulations. Watch for bounces. Bounces do happen. Normally, things don't just go straight down. But for Palantir, if you are trying to execute a 2 hour, a 30-minute, or even a daily play here, it looks very, very nice for the time being. So congratulations to Patreon members who decided to try to execute a trade here. Very, very likely to make structure to go down and then react back up, possibly here, to create the left head, right shoulder, and then we're able to break down over time into lower prices. This could be very interesting by the end of July. Maybe it needs an earnings or something like that, so maybe it leaks out all the way into August, but a very, very nice thing. The last thing that I will cover in this video is volatility. Now, volatility has confirmed down on the daily chart. This is a negative bar as of right now, but we still were able to hold a very, very nice low here. We still were able to make a new high. And when we go into the shorter time frames on tomorrow, actually, when we go into those shorter time frames, make sure you're subscribed so you can join us. The 30-minute chart is suggesting that you're going to get a bigger 2 hour reaction, maybe even on Monday. We'll see if that's able to take place. But you see how we have a lot of congestion in this area right here of those moving averages. So what I want to pay attention to is a nice move from the 2 hour that actually rejects around these type of areas. And then we actually set up another divergence point for the 2 hour going into July 9th. I think that would be very interesting. But something that you do know right now is volatility on the MACD does have a forming divergence, right? Not confirmed. See if that has to flip back around to be confirmed. It's not confirmed right now. And then you also see triple divergence from your RSI if that were to confirm. Okay, so we need these things to confirm to see if we're going to get big volatility. And that's where you can almost see a confirmation, then you pull down, then you see a confirmation, and your timing's a little bit better towards that July 9th. I think it could be very interesting, but you're at risk of a drop at any point for a daily pullback. If we want to squeeze higher, that's perfectly fine. We can raise that floor, but I'm going to remain patient because patience seems like the best thing I can do at this point. And that is what I wrote in my notes, and that's what I'm doing. I am following my plan. So thank you guys so much for watching today. I think we got through a bunch of different topics. I think we got through a bunch of things and we looked through a bunch of charts. It was a lot of fun to do, honestly, with you guys, and we know the areas to pay attention to for the SPY, for the QQQs. And we noticed that a lot of stocks, including the SPY and the QQQs, are at or above their monthly expected move, which would say starting a position, say to go up all of July, actually would be very difficult at this point to make that decision because of how stocks look. They look like they all need some kind of daily pullback, except for a few that are kind of sitting in the middle of their range. So thank you guys for watching. I know it can be a confusing time, but if we're patient enough, I think we're going to be rewarded. At least that's what I'm deciding to do with my plan. If you're deciding to trade this stuff this week, and maybe I'll join you on that because I'm going to break down stocks tomorrow. If you would like to join us, please subscribe so that you can see the shorter time frames, get updated weekly expected moves for the entire week, and get updated daily expected moves for Monday. You can join us tomorrow to get all of that information. And Patreon members, be sure to look out in case we do a private stream or some kind of video where we are breaking down the individual stocks. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and peace out.